Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Nick. I'm your host. And in the Family Ministry Podcast, if this is your first time listening, I just want to let you know that what we do is we interview a leader every week from children's, student, or family ministry, or maybe somebody that impacts all of those ministries like our guest today. And we talk about a topic that's important to you, hopefully. And today's topic is no different. I know it's something that's important to you because a couple years ago in a survey, many of you indicated that this was one of the top 2 topics you're interested in hearing about. And the topic is partnering with parents. And my guest is Sherry Surratt. Sherry is the Executive Director of Family Strategy at Orange. And we talk all about a year-long strategy for partnering with parents. And she just gives a lot of great insight and wisdom. We talk about seasons of the year and how to best use those when it comes to partnering with parents. So it's a great conversation. I'm really excited for what Orange is doing and all they have done and what they're going to be coming out with to help us as leaders partner with parents. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But before we jump into the interview, just want to give you a heads up that I hope you're subscribed to my email list. In a few weeks, we're going to announce something big, something that's exciting. We tried it last year. It was a lot of fun, really helpful, and it's going to be even better this year with some more options. So to hear about that, make sure you subscribe. Just go to my site, nickblevins.com, and click free resources and download a free resource. You can subscribe that way, or if you use the menu on the right, you can subscribe. And we'll talk about that. I'll email about what's coming up here in just a couple weeks. So be sure to subscribe. Well, enough of that. Let's go ahead and jump into my interview with Sherry Surratt about a year-long strategy to partner with parents. Well, Sherry Surratt joins me on the podcast today. Welcome, Sherry.
Thanks, Nick. It's great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your family before we jump in here.
Yeah, I'm married, have been married for about 35 years. Jeff and I have been in ministry all that time together. And my husband, Jeff, works at Southeast Christian Church here in the Denver, Colorado area. And he's over weekend experience and also helps with church planting. And we both love talking with ministry leaders and church planners and family ministry leaders. We have 2 kids. Our son, Michael, is in full-time ministry at a church plant near us. He's an executive pastor. He's married and has 2 little girls, Maggie Claire and Molly Rose, and just added a new little boy to his family, Mason Cooper. So 3 grandkids, and life is really, really good because they live close. We also have a daughter, Brittany, who lives in Charleston, South Carolina, and she's an audio engineer at Seacoast Church. So we're a ministry family. We just believe in church and ministry leaders. I work at Orange and am the Executive Director of Family Strategy there.
That's awesome. Yeah, the Surratt name is definitely a ministry family type name. How many last name Surratts are in ministry roles in churches? I mean, it's like, I don't know, a few dozen, it seems like, or something like that.
It is. It's about 27 adults, Surratts who are in full-time ministry. We kind of jokingly call it a mafia, not a family.
That's funny.
So if there's not a Surratt church near you, it's just because we haven't had time yet. We'll get there.
Yeah, it's going to make it there. That's funny. Now, do you live, I didn't ask you this before, do you live in Colorado? Is it just happenstance that you and your son both live there, or was there some intention there, to live near each other?
Yeah, we lived in California about 6 years ago. My husband was working with Saddleback Church out there, and we moved to the Denver, Colorado area so that I could take the job with MOPS, mothers of preschoolers. A lot of times people will ask me, is that a cleaning company? And no, it's a ministry for young moms. And we moved here so that I could become CEO of that organization. And that's when my husband, Jeff, kind of connected with Southeast Christian out here. Not too long after that, my husband helped a young guy who used to be my kid's youth pastor out at Seacoast come to this area to plant a church. And then he hired my son as his executive pastor, which was really cool because then that meant, grandkids were close by.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I want to talk a little bit. We're going to talk mostly about your role at Orange and partnering with parents and all that kind of stuff. But before we do that, it'd be great to hear a little bit about your time at MOPS. You were there, I want to say about 5 years or so. What was that like, and what did you learn or experience, through MOPS? And maybe tell us a little bit about what it is for somebody who might think it's a cleaning company. What did you learn there that would help serve church leaders, that are trying to serve moms in their church?
It was an incredible experience. It really was my first time to be a CEO of an international company. And MOPS was started right here in the Denver area just by a couple of moms who looked around and thought, you know what, young moms who don't live near their families and are not connected to a church, they need community. They need help in just knowing how to be a great mom. And so they started inviting moms into their homes and for coffee. And it went viral. And MOPS now is in about 20 different countries and has about 5,000 different groups and different churches just within the United States. And they have affiliates, one in Australia, another in the England area. And what they do is they get moms together in groups so that moms can talk and encourage each other. And these are all moms of babies or preschoolers. And then they layer on mentor moms, older moms who have a little bit more experience, so that there's very rich conversation and rich friendships. And it's an open door to the church. So MOPS is hosted by a church. And sometimes for many moms, that's their first introduction to a church body at all. And it's a great introduction because this is where moms learn, oh, this church cares about me as a young mom. They care about my family because they're providing this group. I really encourage church leaders, if you don't have a MOPS group, start one. And they're easy to start. MOPS gives you everything you need because it's a bridge to young families that may not exist in any other way for you.
There is something about like that, that community, that age, like parents who have kids that young age. It's mothers of preschoolers, moms, and they're just more willing to connect maybe than almost any other age and segment of parents. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's why it is a great niche, because they're like hungry for, and I imagine that's how a lot of moms find MOPS groups, is they're searching online, asking on Facebook, and somebody's like, hey, there's a MOPS group here, and now they get connected, not even knowing it's at a church or whatever.
And Nick, it's evangelism at its best, because young moms are looking for friendships. It's the time, research shows us, more than any other time in their life, that they will be more isolated at home, because many working moms will take a little time off to stay at home with their baby or their preschooler, or maybe they'll just work part-time, but they're looking for connection. And if a lady, another mom, invites them to come to a mom's group, the mom a lot of times doesn't really care where it's at. She just wants to find sharp friends. And so she'll come. And about 3,000 moms every single year give their heart to the Lord through their MOPS group. And so it's an incredible evangelistic strategy, outreach strategy for young families.
That's awesome. I would imagine you hear all the time about the need to invite people to church. That's how most people find their way to church. Most people need to be invited multiple times, 7 or 8, whatever it is, before they say yes. I would imagine the yes response rate on an invitation to MOPS is pretty high. It's probably
it is really high.
Really, really high, particularly compared to just, hey, come to church.
Yeah, because you're really saying, you're not saying come to a church service. You're saying come and meet some friends and have some fun and some good food. And so who doesn't want to do that?
Sure. And just to have the community. I think you're right. I think a lot of moms would feel alone at that time. So that's good. That's awesome. So you did that for 5 years, right?
I did.
Was it 5 years? And then transition to your role? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was able to transition it off to a younger lady on my leadership team, which that was something that I saw pretty quickly at MOPS, is they needed some leadership, but they also needed some influence of young moms in the leadership. So that's one thing I was able to do, and had to learn business principles pretty quickly. And what a great experience. And just to any women out there that might be listening, sometimes leadership challenges come to you and you think to yourself, oh, I can't do that. That's too big for me. And I just encourage women, to go for it. You can do more than you think you can. And I surrounded myself with other people who knew what I didn't know, and was able to just lean into them, and they taught me. And it was a great, great experience. I also just underestimated what MOPS really was coming into the organization, and really at that time didn't even see the huge need for churches to be able to have a strategy to reach out to young families. And it really opened my eyes to strategy and how it can be very useful for the church, not in a manipulative way, but I think as the church, we need to really, in any way we can, send a loud message. We are here for you, families. We are here for you, mom and dad, and we have things for you that can help, because a lot of times parents don't look at church that way. And so any way we can send that message, it's a great thing to do.
Yeah, we could, that your encouragement too to women leaders and just being confident in themselves and their ability. We could do a whole podcast on that. I think that would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, I hadn't even thought about that till you talked about it there. It's like, man, we could talk about that. I'd love to hear more about that. We'll have to talk about that in another episode or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I think you're right. I think a lot of people are in that same place too. Like, do I have what it takes? We have a church plant that's going in across the other side of town here that we're helping launch, and the planter did a residency with us. And the children's pastor that he's going to hire, she's 21, was very unsure whether or not she could do it. She kind of grew up at our church, did an internship with us, did an internship at Gwinnett Church in Atlanta with Jeff Henderson there. And that was like her one big concern was like, I don't know if I can do it. And I was like, oh, you can absolutely do it. Like, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to mess up. You're going to learn a lot. But like, I think about me when I was older than her and stepped into it, like, oh, you're good. You're good compared to where I was. You'll be fine. But,
absolutely.
I think more women could hear that.
You know, young leaders, young women leaders, especially, I think, we will feel that. We'll feel like, oh, I can't do that. That must mean I'm not a good leader. That's not what that means at all. It just means that you don't have everything, every skill as a leader. So you need to look around and find out who can help you and form that circle and continue to grow. And I would just challenge any women listening out there, anything you think you can't do, don't shy away. Just go after it. If God is calling you to do it, He's going to place the people in your path that you will need to help you learn and grow.
That's good. That's really good. So you transitioned to Orange, and you're executive director of family strategy. Is that how you phrase
that?
Tell us what that
exactly.
is and what it means. And you've been doing it for a little while now. So what's all involved in your role?
Yeah, I've been here a little over a year. And what this is kind of leaning into different ways that we can help the church leader, help a parent be the best parent they can be, and also developing products on our own that we can offer direct to parent. So we provide a lot of resources for the leader. One of the tools that Orange has is called Go Weekly, a phenomenal tool that helps a church leader every single week connect and communicate with their small group leaders, but also with their parents. And so on the parent side, we provide all kinds of resources for the leader to put into the hands of a parent. Things like things to talk with their family about around the kitchen table, and just different events, different kits that they can use, maybe in the car, things to talk about, or at the dinner table, maybe a discussion or a game to play. And so we provide all of those things for a leader to provide to a parent. We also provide resources for the church to provide for the parent. Of course, Orange prepares curriculum, but within the curriculum, we have a piece called the Parent Cue, and it's that take-home piece that connects the parent to what their child has learned that week. And so it's full of questions to ask and what the Bible story was about, and discussion starters to talk to your child about what they learned that weekend. And then we develop things directly for the parent. And we have three primary ways that we do that, Nick. We have a blog, the Parent Cue blog, where we post multiple times a week articles about your teenager or about your preschooler, every age and phase of a child. And it's directed directly to the parent about how to talk to your child. What do you do when you face this with your child? We also have a podcast that right now we post 2 times a week, but we're going to every single week starting in August. And these are conversations about parenting and about how you can become the best parent. And we cover tough issues like how to talk to your child about sex. How do you address technology in your home and all those kinds of things. And we also have an app, Parent Q app, that you can enter the birth date of your child, and we customize information for you. We give you a phase cue every week that kind of alerts you to what your child is going through that week. And we also connect you with the curriculum. So it's really kind of parenting on the go, right in your hand. And that Parent Q app is free, and it's available on iOS and also Android.
That's awesome. And that app has been around for a while, but you redid it now here recently, and it's always great, but now it's even better. It's amazing with the age integration stuff you mentioned, which is excellent. Yeah. I use it all the time with our kids. Our son's 4 years old, and so you would think, and maybe I should know exactly what we're teaching every week. But in my role with from birth through high school, I don't exactly know what we're teaching every week. But because of the app, I can talk to my son about it. We watched the video again at home the other day, and our daughter, who's not even 2 years old, was loving it. She's sitting there watching it too, and we could talk about it together. So I think my favorite thing about it is people, as a parent, and most people, I'm on my phone a lot. So what I need is like right there. And then I just love that it's each week. It's just something this week. It's not like a 5-year plan or like a 1-year calendar. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, it's just this week here. And yeah. I really love how it's say this, do this. You know what I mean? Talk about this, ask this. I mean, it's that simple, which is really cool. That's awesome. And I would encourage any parent to use it, whether your church uses the curriculum or not. There's great stuff in there.
Absolutely. Even if your church uses a different curriculum, you can still use the Bible story videos for preschool and elementary just to have a short little thing to watch together and then just to talk about it. And we do give practical things to do and say, and that's what Parent Q is all about. It's cueing the parent in those moments with something very simple to say or do or ask or even think about, so that you don't have to come up with that all on your own. And there's naturally occurring times of the day that we set you up for success. So what I love about Parent Q is we don't say to a parent, you need to carve out this big, huge block of time or plan this huge event with your child. No, just take the naturally occurring moments that are already there right in front of you. We'll cue you up with easy things to do and say, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, and again, if you, like, even if your church doesn't use Orange weekly, I've heard a ton of churches use weekly and don't use Orange curriculum because, again, they sync up. So there's a huge benefit if you do use it. But even if you don't, we use the content from weekly, content from Parent Q, and we have Facebook pages for our parents, and we just feed that stuff right in there. I mean, there's a new article on Parent Q. We share it there on Facebook, whether a new podcast, whatever it might be. And it's just for us as staff at church, it's like an easy win. Like it takes us 30 minutes and if that, and we can do a week, probably more than a week in 30 minutes. We can schedule a bunch of stuff that's helpful. And we kind of have I imagine a lot of churches do this. We have sort of like a rhythm, Mondays we do this, Thursdays we do that. So there's kind of a schedule to it, but there's also that ability to just, that was a great article we didn't share. Let's post that or whatever it might be. So it's really good.
Yeah. One of my favorite things, Nick, of weekly is our social media plan that we prepare. So we know that church leaders want to connect via social media with their parents and their leaders, their volunteers. And so what we do is we try to think about what can we do for you that you wouldn't have to do that then would free you up to focus on the relationships and the parts that we can't do since we're not at the church. And that's what I love about weekly is it kind of coaches you, the leader, to connect on a weekly basis with your leaders and your parents, which is very important. It's a critical part of cueing the parent.
And one of the things I love about Orange is how you simplify things, that are things that are really complex. And one of them is like this idea of serving parents. I mean, if you think about, a lot of church leaders are asking, how do we best serve parents? And then you probably think of 10 or 15 different things that would help them or they need. And you all do that. Some of these are like examples of how you serve those different ideas, but you really simplify it down to two things parents need, which I like. And so what are those two things? And then that can even kind of be like an umbrella for what we'll continue to talk about.
Sure. Yeah, we know that church leaders are incredibly busy. I led family ministry at Seacoast Church myself for 8 years, and it was one of the busiest times of my life. And I always felt like there was more to do than I had time to do. And even with a team of people working with me, there was always more to do. And also many times I didn't know exactly what to do. The weekend comes every 7 days, right? So you've got to get curriculum ready, and you've got to get, all those things for church ready. But beyond that, what is it that a family really needs from you? And so we have boiled it down to two things. A family needs you to help them be more present in their family. So we want to help parents to utilize that time that I talked about before, those times that occur naturally in the day. And Deuteronomy 6 sets us up really well for this, because it talks about in that chapter about how we need to, as parents, tell our parents about God and show our kids who God is in those times of day that naturally occur. When we wake up in the morning, when we're out walking along the way, when we go to bed at night, when we sit down to eat. And so those times still occur. We're not walking to places so much anymore. Now we're spending time in the car. So we title those times morning, meal, drive, and bedtime. For every family, whatever phase your kids are in, those times are occurring. Now, drive time occurs less often with your teenager who drives themselves. And so sometimes we call that their time. Those moments around the house when all of a sudden your teenager is ready to talk, right? So you need to be ready for those moments. And that's really what our curriculum, our parent Q piece, our app is all about, because we set you up well with those times of day to help you be more present with your own kids. And, that's really what parents want to do. They want to spend quality time with their kids. They just don't always know exactly what to do or how to do it. So we set you up, the leader, to be able to set the parent up to be more present in their family. And the second thing that we know families need from us is we need to help them be more connected to a faith community and also to other parents. And, a lot of families who live in our communities, honestly, who don't attend, they honestly don't see the need for us many times. Otherwise, they'd come, right? But they do see the need for friendships. And so this is where we can help even those families who don't attend, is we can provide opportunities for them to just meet other families. And one thing we know that is very helpful is a parent who has a third grader, for example. When we connect them with other families who have a third grader so that they can have conversations about what is it like parenting a third grader. And that's why I love our phase material at Orange, because we have specific things to help you do exactly that, to help connect a parent to your church, but also to other families that have kids in the same age and phase.
Phases, I think, just has been a great project. I guess it's only been a few years that it's been out. It feels like longer than that. And there's, new stuff coming all the time, which is great. And I just think it really did scratch the itch that parents have of like, what do I do right now? Plus the challenge parents have of I'm kind of figuring out what my kid needs and how to best serve them. And then it changes, because they get older or whatever. So I think Phases, for that reason, and plenty of other reasons, has been really, really good. And something else that you have talked about recently that I want to talk through that I think would be helpful. It has like a visual to it. So people listening, we'll link to it in the show notes, but it's this picture of kind of the seasons of a year and how we can engage with parents in the different seasons, because they're not all the same. And sometimes, like, I think a lot of us think about summer, people are away. So maybe we pull back, or fall is a time to start, but you have even more to that. So I'd love to talk through that, and we'll put a link to the picture in the show notes. So, for obviously everybody can't see it now, but they can hear us talk about it and look at that picture later. And then I'd love to ask you about some like specific ways you're seeing church do this and engage with these seasons. So can you walk us through a little bit of that cycle and the seasons and what a church could focus on in different seasons?
Sure. And we've based a lot of this on research of just what the family goes through in a typical year. And we call this kind of the annual family wheel. And so if you think of a circle, and at the very top of the circle is the word start. And this is really kind of when school starts. And it's really interesting in August because all of a sudden families will come back to us, right? And it's kind of like they've been asleep all summer long, and then all of a sudden they wake up in August and they start to come back to church. This is what we call start. This is a great time to start with your family ministry. And I think it's a great time to, introduce your families to their small group leaders, or to even have an open house event where maybe you just bring in a little bit of phase material to let the family know, you know what? We're here to help you with the developmental phase of your child. So we like to have church leaders think of this start point as a great time to think of starting your family ministry cycle right there. And you can gather families together in one event. You could use that event to connect families together with each other, but it's kind of starting them on a healthy cycle of interaction with your family ministry.
Do you think that that's something, because a lot of times, especially with phase materials coming out, I know a lot of churches have used phase and introduced it to their parents in like a big event. But in your mind, this is a yearly thing. So it doesn't have to be a huge event every year, but there needs to be some version of a start, like connecting with parents and engaging them at open house, whatever, each year.
Yeah. At this start point, families are thinking new rhythm. Every fall is a new grade for their child, which means new things, right? So a child is maybe starting first grade or sixth grade or even ninth grade. This is a new start for that family. There's going to be a new rhythm. It's not like everything is brand new, but their child is in a new grade. So this is new for them. So their thinking start, even if they don't express that to you, this is a great time to just gather them in because you have their attention. There's nothing like having an event for parents of middle schoolers, for that sixth grade parent who is wondering what in the world are we about to face with middle school coming up. And they are a captive audience. So if you provide material that will help them answer the questions that they're asking right in that moment, they're asking, what do I do about this school year? How do I get into this rhythm? What's going to work for our family? And you host an event where you're answering some of those questions. I was talking to a church recently who did this last year, and they're going to do it again this year, where they're inviting an elementary school principal, a middle school counselor, and a high school principal. They're gathering them together just for a one-night event. They're breaking the parents up into the appropriate groups, letting that professional talk with them just about a very simple, here are 3 things you can do this year to help your child be successful in school. And they said parents were all over it because that's the felt need parents are feeling in that start point in the fall. Now, of course, as a leader, you're going to want to bring in other great stuff about your family ministry. You're going to want to provide a next. What do we have next for you? And maybe that is offering parent circles where you then provide small groups for your parents to be able to sit down with other elementary families and talk about their child in elementary school or middle school or high school. And so it's a great point to connect them to you and to also help them connect with other families and learn how to be more present with their own kids.
I hadn't thought about this till just now when you were talking through it. I'm looking at the image and thinking about the fall and start and all that. And I know there are a lot of churches that transition their kids early, like before summer, like June or May or whatever. And because of that, I imagine like many churches, they have events or gatherings or things or whatever. And so if it for them, they probably need to do some of this stuff there, even though they're heading into summer, which is typically more of a downtime. If that's when they're going to gather parents and that's when they're going to transition kids, they probably just need to do some of this stuff then, knowing. Or do you think they transition them and then try to get them back together in the fall? I don't know. Maybe it's both. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And, at the beginning of summer, at the end of spring, this is also on our circle as well. But what's really on families' minds at the beginning of summer is, how are we going to have a great summer? What are we going to do with our summer? And families are thinking about it differently. For example, a family who has a 12th grader who just graduated, they're thinking, this is our last summer as a family with our, senior, and how are we going to spend it? A parent of a 5th grader who just graduated 5th grade is thinking that same thing. Oh my gosh, our last summer with our elementary student who's going into middle school. So really, even for churches that promote early in the spring, I think it's better to address what's really on the parent's mind at that point, which is, summertime. You can promote, but then when you get to that August point, that start point, really treat that as a start. Okay, summer is over. We're ready to start school. So that's a great time for a phase event to kind of start the parent off in the school year thinking great. And, even parents of preschoolers are still thinking this way because new rhythm starts in August, really for every family, no matter what ages of their children are. And so that's just a great start point. As we circle around the circle, Nick, the next point on our circle, I call it restart. And that's in January because families have just come through the holidays, right? And they've gotten off of the schedule and they've eaten too much junk food. And now moms especially are thinking, how do we get back to normal? How can we get back to that rhythm that we established in the fall? So this is another great point for a family ministry to have what I call a restart point. You could have another event where you circle back and talk about phase again and getting back into those healthy habits. You could at this point have even a sermon series on your weekend for your adults that is talking about developing healthy habits, or financial habits is another topic that parents are thinking about in January. And so that's just a great restart point to gather your families together again as a family ministry to talk about getting back into the rhythm that they had established in the fall, because everybody steps away from that rhythm in December. School's out and all the holiday things that are happening. And so that restart point is really good. I love to encourage church leaders, if they didn't provide opportunities in the fall for their families, their parents to get in a parent circle, a small group of parents, January is a great time to do that, to circle back to your families and say, we know you're thinking about habits. A great habit to start would be a small group habit, mom and dad, where you're meeting with other families to talk about parenting. And we have great phase materials that we can provide for church leaders to be able to do this. So January restart is a great time to do that. As you circle around the wheel, spring comes, and this is marked with spring break, right? And this is a point now where families, again, start to go a little crazy because school is going to end. And so parents are asking the question, how can we finish well? And this is usually right around in March, April, where there's a little bit of school left. And so we call this time focus, because a parent has a hard time in focusing on the things that are good, because it gets a little crazy with school ending. And maybe if they have a senior in their home, now their senior is graduating from high school and they're panicking a little bit, or their sixth grader is failing math. And so how are we going to finish the school year well? So this is a great time for church leaders not to think about an event, but to think about simple encouragement that they can send to the parents. Maybe it's an encouraging weekend message, or maybe from the family ministry, it's an encouraging card that you send to the parents in the mail, just reminding them of the things they are doing well. Because for a parent at this time of the year, it's really hard to remember what you're doing well. And so we love to think of the focus time in the spring around spring break as an encouragement time for families to help them focus on their family till the end of school.
We used to, speaking of that, like, I think one thing we've noticed that I've heard other churches notice too is you really do have a hard time. If you want to do an event, it's hard to get families to do anything past late April, like early April. Like May, it seems like it used to be kind of maybe the time when you could think about doing something, and summer's coming, so get something in before summer or whatever. And now it feels as bad as like early September or whatever, starting the year. Like it feels just as busy with, I guess, parties and graduations. And of course, down south, they're out of school after Memorial Day. So, it's even closer to the end. So we've noticed that too, whereas we pretty much don't do any events or anything like that after Easter, and maybe not even right before Easter if it's too late or whatever. So I think that's true. That's true. It is it's a hard time to fight for the attention of parents.
It is really hard, and I think at each of these points, if you just ask yourself the question as a ministry leader, what is the parent thinking and feeling? And if you direct whatever it is that you do at that exact thing that they are thinking and feeling, whatever you say is going to be louder than any other noise that they are hearing. As school closes, a lot of times that's when we as church leaders are asking for things. Like we're asking for summer camp registration and for VBS registration, and we're asking for more things. And the parent is like, please, I am so over this. The school is asking me for so many things. So I think it's really good to think about your timing and to think about how can we not ask the parent for anything, but how can we give? How can we give encouragement? How can we offer, just some kind of encouragement that they are doing okay and that they're going to make it through the end of the year. Which carries us to the fourth point, Nick, which is recharge. And that's the beginning of the summer. And as you said, it's really hard to capture a parent's attention in the summer. But the question that they're thinking about as they face summer is, how can we spend this summer well? Every parent wants to do that. And this time is stressful for parents as well, because working parents who have young kids are having to figure out, what are the kids going to do during the summer while we're working? Parents of middle schoolers are thinking, how am I going to keep my child busy so that they don't get into all kinds of shenanigans, on their own? And same thing for parents of high schoolers. And so a lot of times as church leaders, we will step back because we think parents don't want to hear from us. They're gone on vacation. The reality is families are not gone on vacation all summer long, and they are looking for things for their family to do. So they may not come to church every weekend on the summer, but it's still a good idea to offer one or two things for parents to be able to have fun together, because that's what they're looking for. And a lot of things that churches will offer in the summer are VBS for preschool or elementary kids and summer camp for middle school and high school kids. And so just think about those two opportunities if you're already doing those things. How can you partner with mom and dad with those two things? VBS, I love the churches who think about offering some sort of a family night at the end of VBS, so parents can come and look at all the things that the kids learned or that they did during VBS. That's a great time to pull parents together to partner with them. Summer camp is a great time to partner with parents, because parents of middle schoolers and high schoolers want to know what their kids' experience was like. And so at the end of camp, it's great to pull them together, let them watch that great video and the great pictures that you took at camp, and just invite them in for some conversations. I love it also when churches offer some sort of a family experience over the summer. Maybe it's just a movie night out where you show a movie out on your church grounds and invite families to come. Anything that you can offer for family to have fun together, they're looking for that over the summer.
I wonder too, this is not something I thought about again until you were talking about it that way, because you're right. It's not like families are gone the whole summer. They're gone a week or two. It's just not the same week or two. So that's why it's hard to plan something, where you need them all there. But years ago we did, Carrie Newhoff's church had done this great family experiment thing, kind of off the great date experiment idea that if married couples, the curriculum and stuff that you all have for marriages has those ideas of like date night, like kits, I guess you could say, and they could go do it on their own. And Carrie's church had done that with families, and we did a spin on that where ours was kind of like we did get them together, but some of that they did on their own, and then we ended together. So ours was a little bit more of an event where people did come together. But it makes me think that's the kind of thing that summer can be great for, is can you just give families a kit of something they can do in the summer? Because like you said, they're looking for it. I know as a parent, I had a reminder today that I saved as something I thought that would be cool to do this summer. And so like if my church gives me a kit, an idea ready to go, and I can do it whenever, that's something that could be helpful. And then on the church's side, it's not an event. It's like, it's not something they have to put hours and hours into and pull off.
Exactly.
And, the whole thing. And it's more just like, hey, we put some time into this, but it's up to you to use it and, maybe hear stories. I think that could be a good summer idea too.
That's great. I love that. And, anything that the church can provide to help the parent to be more present with their kids, free ideas around your community, around your area, things that you can do, a summer family challenge, which we just put up on weekly for church leaders to share with their families. things that you can do for little or no cost at all, just ways for a family to have fun together, because that's exactly what they want to do. So let's make it easy for them to do that and provide those ideas and those activities. And Nick, that's exactly the things that we're kind of dreaming and scheming about in Parent Q. So just to kind of, I won't give too much away, but church leaders can kind of look for some of those things coming from Parent Q. A summer recharge kit. So kind of a vacation kit in the car, if you will, but things that families can do in the car as they're traveling to a relative's house or on vacation, just ideas that they can use together to spend that summer wisely. We're also going to be creating some drive time packs, so things to talk about and do in the car while you are driving to wherever you're driving, because families do tend to spend more time in the car over the summertime. And so we want families to be able to take advantage of those great opportunities. And, something else that's coming, Nick, with our Parent Q app, we just launched it at Orange Conference this past April, but we're working on a second level to that app so that churches can customize it. And this will be, I think, just a great opportunity for churches, because for a church leader, you will be able to put in some of your specific opportunities that you have for your families that are in the app. So if you have special things over the summer that you want to provide for just your families that attend your church, you'll be able to do that in the upgraded version of the app, which we think is probably going to come out at the next Orange Conference, which will be April 2018.
That's awesome. Is there anything else that that you're working on or thinking about that might be coming in the future to help churches with parents? Because I know that, especially with Phase coming out a few years ago, you're just putting out stuff every year, and I know there are more things coming all the time. This year, you had the Phase guides for every age, and they released at the conference. And then what is it, July? Sometime in July when people can get them online.
Right. Yeah. You can make those Phase guides available to your parents. Actually next month in July. And that's a book for every year of a life of a child. And it kind of orients the parent. What is my child like today in this year? What should I know as a parent? How can I talk to them? In those Phase parent guides, it has conversation guides in how to talk to your child about sex and technology and faith and health. And so we're going to be bringing more things for families. We're going to be developing kits around those things, so a family can have more than just a discussion starter, a conversation guide about those topics, but we're going to have more to be able to help a family even have activities and things to think about and do surrounding those discussion topic areas. So look for, from Parent Q, more kits to help the family utilize those times, and an upgrade to our app, and more discussion starters for the family for mealtime and drive time and things like that. That's
awesome. So I have a question for you, and it could take a whole podcast, which we don't have time for, so I have to get the short version. But I know one of the things our church and other churches have done is we have kind of said, because for years we've tried to serve parents, and we've used Orange Curriculum, and so we've shared the app and all the resources every week that we give out, and the podcast and the Parent Q website and all that stuff. And so we're trying to do all these things to serve parents, but we also, in the past, wanted to make sure we weren't just doing a bunch of stuff without a plan either. We wanted to maximize it. This season schedule, the annual family wheel is an example of trying to put a strategy around it, or even thinking about the two things that parents need to be more present and to be in community. So we kind of looked at, well, what would a good year look like? Like in our church, with our size, with the resources we have, the limited time, all that, what would a good year look like? And it included, as we thought through it, a kickoff like you're talking about in the fall, small groups for parents, which we have not done as well as we would like. Obviously there are certain small groups that just based on who's in them, it's parents with kids near the same age, and it works great. But we haven't been as intentional about creating those groups. We've done some classes, and some of them have been very good. Our class for kind of the early age years of kids is really well attended. Parents love it. In fact, they want to come back for another one. They have a second kid. They're like, hey, we forgot everything. Like, we need to come back. But so we have all these we have classes, groups, the kickoff event, resources. And so we, put it up on a calendar of like, well, this is what we feel like it could look like. But the other thing I think about, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on, is churches can't do everything.
Right.
Especially, I think, I don't know what the exact answer is, but based on the size of your church, you shouldn't try to do everything because you're just going to spread yourself too thin. I tend to think a church needs to be, and maybe this is just me, 1,000 or more to really even start adding a bunch of other pieces. If you're 300, it's just hard you don't have the staff usually and the time to be able to work on all these different things. So what would you say to a church that's like, where do I start? Like, what's the most important piece or pieces, to start partnering with parents, knowing that I can't just implement the whole thing right now? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. And I think one of the worst mistakes we can make is develop a huge, big strategy and pile on everything. And it makes the parents feel more overwhelmed than they already feel. Somebody told me recently they were getting ready to have a third child. They said having a third child is kind of like being in a swimming pool up to your neck in water, and you're already holding the two kids, one in each arm, and then somebody throws you another kid in the water.
Yeah.
And
What are you going to do?
What? How can we do all of this? I think that's why I love our strategy wheel, because it says start. And I think you start there. Even if in the whole year, that was the only event you could have, I would say do it then at the start point. And, sometimes churches will say, oh, school starting, it's so busy. But that's where you have the parents' attention because they are asking for help. And so even if you don't have your start event in August when school starts, have it a little bit later in September. A few weeks after school has started, when parents are already kind of back in that routine of coming back to church. But I would think bigger even, Nick, than just the church, the families that come to our church. I would think about opening it to the community, because every family in the community, whether they attend your church or not, are still asking that same question. How can we develop a good rhythm for this school year? And what are we going to face this year with our kids? So I would think about making it a bigger event than just for the families inside your church. And then at the restart point, if you can only do one more thing, that's when I would think about parent circles. So if you can't do parent circles at that start point, if it's just too much, then do your event at the start point, do your parent circles at the restart point, and then at the focus point, don't do an event, just send some simple encouragement to the parents, mail it to their house, or do an encouraging sermon series on the weekend. And then in the summer, provide something for the family to be able to spend time together. And maybe it's not an event at all. Maybe it's just a list of great ideas that are free in your community, or ideas that your team has come up with of ways to recharge together as a family. So if you wanted to just offer your event at the start point, your parent circles at the restart point, and encouragement at the focus point, summer ideas at the recharge point. That's a great beginning to a family strategy. And here's the deal with the circle. A circle never ends, right? So it's continuing. Every family, every year will come back to that start point. And so you reactivate them every single year at that start point, because while they have gone around the circle before, they're in a new place because their child is a year older, in a new grade, facing new things. And so you still have their attention every year at the start point. For churches that are larger, like yourself, after you start those basic things, then you can step back as a team and you can start to layer on. Okay, we did a great start event. So this year, now we're going to do that start event again, and we're going to layer on parent circles. At the restart point, we had parent circles, and so now we're going to layer on another phase event again that maybe takes a parent deeper. And, continuing on around the circle, you can just think about what kinds of things you want to layer on. I encourage a church leader, don't tackle everything at once, because you're going to end up doing nothing well, doing a lot, but nothing really well. So focus, figure out as a team what you can do well. And even if it's only one thing, go after it with everything you can. Get your senior leadership on board with you. Invite as many families, make personal invitations, answer their felt needs, and it'll be a success.
I think one of the things that, like when you were talking about adding on circles and, if you can't do parent circles in the fall, do them in the spring. We have actually found, like, I think our full plan, when it's runs the way we want it to run, we would, do the start in the fall and gather parents together. And we've done our classes in the fall, and that's worked really well because they're usually 4 or 6 weeks, and we can find 4 or 6 weeks easily there in the fall. The parent small groups are a little harder because usually we want to give them 3 months, 12 weeks or something. And there is 12 weeks there, but it's just tight, between Thanksgiving and after Labor Day, it's tight. And so we found a good rhythm where we can do the kickoff. And this is what we want to do. The whole thing isn't necessarily in place right now. Do more classes in the fall, and then small groups January, to April kind of time, because there's just a longer run there where they can do that. So, and it's not that we couldn't do both at different times, but I think we're going to think about it that way. And one of the things I heard from somebody else that I thought that's really smart, his church, they offer different classes and groups and things like that. And to kind of track how well they're doing with it, they look for not like what's the attendance at everything or whatever. It's more like what percentage of families have done something this year. They engaged in one of these things, a class, a small group, the start thing. You know what I mean? I thought that's really smart, because you can't really expect parents to be, 70% of your parents coming to everything, but can they come to something? I think that was a good approach.
I love that. And you're right. Parents can't come to everything that you offer. And sometimes we get discouraged, right, when we only have a certain percentage of families that come. I think I would look at that a little bit differently. Of course, you want big numbers, but over the course of an entire cycle, looking at the 4 points in the wheel, how many families were you able to engage? And I would look at that as kind of setting a goal as a family ministry team. Let's see if we can up that number every single year, that total number of families that we were able to impact, not necessarily trying to grow the number at a particular event every single year, but really kind of seeing how many families you can engage in a year.
Yeah. Our team, we always go back to the parent levels of involvement that Orange talks about, and the 4 different levels, and just the idea that like the most engaged parents you're probably only going to have 20% or something at that level. Right. And so when you do things like this, you are setting yourself up to fail if you think you're going to get 80% of your parents to come. That's usually not going to happen. And now if it's one kickoff event and it's well done, and I don't know, there's a good felt need that you're hitting, maybe you could do really well, but still to apply that to everything else, small groups and things like that, you're just setting yourself up to fail. So I don't know what the number is, but we try to remind our team of that too, so that we know what reality is. What's the real goal here? It's not 100% of the parents who've been here in the last month. It's just not going to happen, Right. But how can we reach those who are maybe at these 2 levels or these 3 levels or whatever? So that's always been helpful. I'll try to link to that in the show notes, because I know for us, that's been a helpful gauge, just to remember, we're always reaching new families. And so you can't expect that they're all going to come in right away and in 2 months turn into families that are engaging with everything we do, using the app and everything else.
And, I think we want to start where a family is, right? So some of our engaged families, they're ready to have prayer every night as a family, or a Bible, a family devotional or whatever. Many of your families, they're not there yet. And so if you could just get a daddy to be able to go in at bedtime and connect with his daughter at bedtime, that's a win for that family. You don't want them to stop there. You always want them to encourage to take a next step. But I think we need to sometimes get realistic and be able to think about, where is a family right now? If they're not connecting at all at bedtime, getting them to just connect once a week at bedtime, that's a win. And then we're going to help them move forward for more connection. But meeting a family where they are is really important.
Yep, that's true. Well, I think we could talk about this a lot longer, because I just feel like most of us in church world have not figured this out, or by any stretch of the imagination, have a lot to learn and a lot we want to do better. This is one of the areas that I think is just hard to know how well you're doing, because it's not like we can stay in touch with parents well enough to really know, how well we're doing. But this helps. I love what you're doing at Orange, all these resources. I'm excited to see the stuff that's coming down the road. That'll be great.
Yeah.
I know that'll be a big benefit. But if people if they have any questions about anything we talked about, or they want to connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, my email address is ssurratt@rethinkgroup.org. I'll spell that SSURRATT@rethinkgroup.org. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you can reach out to me in any of those ways. I'd love to hear from any ministry leaders who have great ideas or things that you've tried that connects your parents or connects you to your parents. Love to hear your ideas or suggestions of things that you'd like for Parent Q to tackle.
That's great. You might get a lot of things there, which would be awesome. I know you're actively listening for stories and things from church leaders of what's working. That's something you're working on and have been working on. So if anybody's got something that's working, don't be selfish. Share that with the rest of us, right?
That's right.
Email you and maybe you'll find a way for everybody else to hear about it. That'd be great. Well, thank you for taking this time and thanks for the work you do. It's making a big difference.
Thank you, Nick.
It helps.
Thank you. Thanks. It was a privilege to be here today.
Please take Sherry up on her offer there at the end. She would love to hear from you. If you have some ways that you're partnering with parents and it's working, she would love to hear about that. They're collecting all of those good ideas so that they can share them with the rest of us. So definitely, if you have something that you're doing, reach out to Sherry, let her know. She would love to hear about that. I can't even tell you how excited I am for all the resources that will be coming from Orange over the next couple of years related to partnering with parents. I just think it's going to be great. Here are a few action items I have coming out of this episode. One is the Use the Seasons wheel, which you can download in the show notes at nickblevins.com/episode 63. Download that wheel, print it, and plot everything you do on that wheel, by season. Next, evaluate what fits or doesn't fit. What is in the wrong season? Where is a season too full or too empty? And then the last step would be to trim down and maybe focus on one thing each season. Or if you're starting from scratch, kind of design your wheel and start with one thing, like she talked about that kickoff there in the fall. So those are some action items I had. I don't know about you, but I love hearing everything they're working on, the ideas, the kind of the framework that Orange can provide sometimes when it comes to partnering with parents or leading small groups. They just do a really good job of creating a strategy for those kind of things, and this is no different. So that's really exciting. Well, in the next episode of the Family Ministry Podcast, I talk with Ricardo Miller, children's pastor and evangelist, and we talk about the top mistakes that ministers make. And we talk about the top mistakes that children's ministry pastors make, but when you hear the list, you'll realize it applies to every pastor, every leader. It's not just specific to children's ministry. So you don't want to miss that. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Just get notified when the new episode comes out, and we'll see you next week in the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.